Welcome to What Happened on Saturday with Marlon Kerner. And Marlon, I feel like the title to our show has never been more apropos than today. Ever since Saturday at about 3:15, 3:30, I've been looking forward to talking to you about what actually did happen last Saturday. We just got the college football rankings for people that are joining us here on Wednesday. A little bit of a surprise and some silver lining for your Buckeyes. Let's go backwards though. Talk me through your Saturday, the game, and then I'll share some thoughts with you about what my observations were and my observations of watching it with you by text. I enjoyed, once again, I enjoy when you are more of a fan than a level-headed former player. I get a kick out of that. So the floor is yours, my friend.
First of all, I'm in all black because I'm mourning my loss. My Saturday and Sunday, it was just a rough football weekend for me. My Buckeyes lost, our Bills lost, and then I had to change my avatar based off of a
Mm,
bet with Jay Reamersma to that team up north logo. And the crazy part about that is before I even get into the game, Jay sent me a picture and I was like, it won't fit. He sent me the M. And I'm like, it won't fit. So I literally had to go find
oh,
a Michigan background that would fit on Twitter so that it would look right. And so I had to go search and find it also. It was just like
and
just
now
the
it's in your
knife
it's in
stuck
your
in and just
it's
turned.
in your
Yes.
Google searches now. Now it's
And I
in
get
your
searches,
like
and I was like, "Hey, how about another U of M football?" I don't care about U of M football. I could care less. I don't want that logo. But yeah, it was just one of those crazy things. And we were texting, and we talked about it earlier in the week. And in our first episode, is there was a lot of hype, a lot of noise surrounding this game. Did Michigan cheat? Did they not cheat? Stallions. That should Harbaugh be suspended? Should he not be suspended? Michigan versus everybody's shirts. All those things. But I think we talked for maybe 2 minutes where we talked about all those things aside, there's a game that has to be played on Saturday, and it's going to look bad in the series if the guy who's been there for so many years loses to the interim head coach.
mhm.
And sure, the interim head coach right now, his resume is looking really good. He beat the number 2 team in the country. He's undefeated right now. He's definitely executing and getting his team playing at a high level. And that was one of the first storylines that played in there. They executed. They played well, even without Harbaugh there. And I don't know if they played differently if Harbaugh's there or not. We'll never know. But I was definitely impressed in how the intensity, no matter what happened, they stayed focused. They still brought the intensity the entire game. So you have to give kudos to Michigan and how they played. And then I want to make sure I give kudos to Jay Reamersma. If you didn't hear our bonus episode that we aired Saturday morning before the
He
game,
nailed it. He
he
nailed
kind
it.
of talked about his experience, but more importantly, he talked about what he wanted to see Michigan do and execute in this game. And one of those things he talked about was using the tight end more, really going after and exploiting the matchups. He thought that Michigan's tight end had an advantage against our linebackers and coverage, the way we like to play a lot of zone, what covered two safeties behind that. He thought there would be some gaps they could run in. He wanted to know what would it look like if we lined up man to man. He thought their tight end Loveland, I think that's his last name, Loveland.
Colton Loveland. Yep.
Loveland would have an advantage with his size and I agree, he had the size and he ran a lot better and was a lot faster than what I thought and anticipated he was going to be. He ran away from some of our safeties. He definitely had the advantage against our linebackers. So it was kind of crazy going into this game. I'm thinking of all those things, and then you think like throw it out the window. It's a rivalry game, and I was like, okay, well, how's this going to come back? Because I even texted you like, hey, we're a better second half team.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought there was some mismanagement where you run out the clock, you still have a timeout to go for a long field goal. I thought, again, when we talk about Ohio State and some of the things they like to do, they like to play it safe. In this game, you can't play it safe. You have to try to go in and score points because field goals aren't going to win the game for you. You have to score touchdowns. And so I thought Ohio State could have been a little bit more aggressive there. Maybe tried to pick up an extra 5, 6 yards and maybe make that a 48-yarder. Maybe if you can pick up a first down, clock's going to stop. You have a little bit of time. You have a timeout in your back pocket. So you have some time you can execute and try to call a play and stop the clock and get yourself in a better position. It proved to be 5 more yards would have helped. I think when you look about
Sure.
that kick, 5 more yards would have helped, made it a little bit more manageable kick, maybe made the kicker not have to think about it a little bit. I've got to get into this and really lay into this kick. he definitely probably felt more comfortable kicking a 49, maybe a 48-yard field goal. So I thought that was one of the things. The first turnover. I mean, when we look at that, like it's a RPO. You have to come off that read. Like it was almost like McCourt just said, I'm a pull this and I'm gonna throw to Marvin. Now, there's a couple things, and I'm not gonna sit up here and argue on whether Marvin Harrison Jr. gave enough effort. Really, he thought the ball wasn't coming his way. Like in a big scheme of things, I'm running a slant. Will Johnson jumped it. He was right in the middle. There's no way this ball is going to be completed, and McCourt threw the ball anyway. Yeah, you could argue on should he have given more effort, try to make the tackle or whatever. I'm not going to debate that. It's just the game is over. And as we look at, and I'll pull up some stats because it was just kind of crazy. Michigan, the game came down to who could protect the ball, and who could convert on third and fourth down, because that's where it's going to come down. I thought Ohio State did a better job converting, and the stats show that on third down, Ohio State was able to finish drives. They really made Michigan do a lot of punting. But when it came down to really being aggressive when they had to, when they really said we're going to extend a drive, in particular in that fourth quarter when they went on that 7-minute drive to really eat up the clock, that was the difference. They went for it on fourth down and they executed in Ohio State. We didn't go for it on fourth down, and then we turned the ball over. We turned the ball over early, which led to a Michigan touchdown, and then we turned the ball over late, which ended the game. And that was really the biggest key. I thought we ran the ball decently. Michigan ran the ball better. I thought we passed the ball. Again, Marvin Harrison Jr. only had 8 or 9 targets that game. You've got to find a way to target him more when he is your best offensive playmaker. You've got to scheme better. But at the end of the day, this came down to a rivalry. And when you look at the rivalry games, you can throw all this stuff out the window. It came down to Michigan being more physical. They dominated the line of scrimmage when they needed to. They were able to knock our defensive line back and run the ball. And we talk about being sound gap wise. They popped a 22-yarder. And it was just all those little things of where you got to be gap sound. We jump the gap, they pop it. Blake Corum sees it, he pops it, he runs for a touchdown. Just we made too many mental errors in crucial moments, and we didn't execute at the highest level. And on that last play, I just shook my head because I'm sitting there like, dude, you predetermined you were going to Marvin. Now, I will say when you look at the replay, if he had time, that's a big completion because he had the gap. So I understand what he was reading. But then you also have to understand, like, okay, if I need to get the ball out quickly, you got a guy in the flat you can throw the ball to, and you live to fight another down. You had a guy to the left flat you could have thrown to. So you had other options you could check down to. And it was just kind of like, he's like, I've got to make this play as me when I'm watching it. That's how it felt like. And I'm sure the fan base feel the same. Like, dude, just throw the check down. You see the rush coming, attack. The tackle didn't hold up, or the guard didn't hold up right. Okay, you got pressure in your face. Check down. You can throw the check down. If you throw the check down, the ball's going to end up in the dirt, and we're going to line up and fight again. And now you have another chance to find Marvin Harrison Jr. Again, we came up short 3 years in a row. And I'm not going to sit up here and argue and say they should or go into some of the Twitter back, because it was fun to read Twitter after. I'm not going to lie. It was just fun to read the comments and is this team having a fight and this and that and all those things, and do they care about it? That is, I'll let Twitter fight that battle. I'm not going to fight that battle. Somebody who played in this series and didn't have a winning record against Michigan. I'm in no position to sit up here and tell somebody, especially former players that are 3-1 or 4-0 against Michigan, how that team should play. I will say Twitter can fight it out, but I thought they fought hard. They just came up a little short, and it was disappointing because you needed this game to kind of say, okay, we can turn the tide. Like right now, there's a huge mental block, and now you may or may not have Marvin Harrison Jr. back next year. I don't even know if McCord's going to be your guy. What are you going to do if you're going to bring in and go to the portal and find a more poised quarterback, maybe somebody who's more polished than what McCord is? But it's going to be really interesting to see what it looks like. This is the type of game that can end your career if you're a head coach at Ohio State. So we don't even know what it's going to look like after it all shakes down and all the games played out this weekend. And if Ohio State gets into the college football playoff, I don't think they get in, by the way. If they get in or don't get in, you could possibly look at the last game that Ryan Day played against Michigan. And so it's a lot that's going to happen that we don't know how it's going to play out and what the board is thinking about. But these are the type of games and situations that can end your career as a head coach at Ohio State.
Did you at any point feel like the Buckeyes were going to win that game? Because I didn't.
I thought after the third quarter, I'm like, okay, we have a really good chance. The way they played, I said, if they can play like this and really shut down that run and get Michigan to punt, then I thought we had a really good chance. When when Michigan kind of went up, I was like, okay, we're going to come back. And it was a nice little back and forth battle in that third and early fourth quarter. Where I thought we were going to really be in trouble was if it came down to we had to rely on Kyle McCord to make a throw. I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to execute like he did in that Notre Dame game. I
Well,
didn't think
and the Michigan guy didn't drop the pick.
yeah, he didn't drop the pick. But I didn't think that Michigan would give him the same looks, right? Like Notre Dame kind of said, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to give you some one-on-ones. I was like, there's no way Michigan's going to do that. They're going to say, we're going to make you throw it. So either you find the seam, and if you make a great throw and Marvin catches it, so be it. But they were saying, take the check down. We dare you to try to throw it and fit it here because we have all these people dropping around where you like to get Marvin Harrison Jr. In those route trees and route combinations. And they were pretty much saying, I dare you to throw it to the flat. Let's see if he can make somebody miss and get out of bounds. And they were daring him to do that. And he decided he was going to take the in route. That their defensive line made a good play and beat our guy. I mean, from the onset, he beat him. So, okay. So he didn't really have that much time to really set his feet and get the throw off. So I get that part. That was the first loss. But once they went on that long drive, I was like, you know what? They went for it on fourth down. They did a whole lot of things where they just extended that drive and ate up the clock. And you knew they weren't really trying to score a touchdown. They were just like, if we can kick a field goal, now we make you have to score a touchdown to win and beat us. And I was like, I don't know if he can do that. I don't know if he has enough composure and enough experience, really. Because that's the main thing is experience breeds composure in those situations. If you've been there before and you understand, okay, pressure's coming quick, I got to get to my check down because I know my check down is. This is his first game as a starter. I was like, I don't know if he has enough experience throughout the regular season to give him enough composure in this type of game, in this environment where you've been hearing all year long, you're not good enough. You shouldn't be the quarterback here. Fans were clamoring for, why don't you bench him and put somebody else in, like all year long. So he's, you can tell that's an emotional toll that's been taken on him. And he's going to try to prove everybody wrong and have one of the best games of his career. And I didn't think he threw the ball well, except for the first interception. Like he threw the ball pretty decently. He skipped some balls, but he had done it all season long. I thought he made good decisions after that interception. And then he just got hit on the last play. But we can sit up here and dissect this all day. At the end of the day, I mean, Michigan, they made plays. They ran the ball well. They called great plays and things that you like, hey, they hadn't shown that all year. They did things to get their come on, halfback pass. Halfback pass.
Right.
I'm like, that's a great call. I'm sitting there like, that is a great call. Like that's fantastic. Something they hadn't shown all year long. And when you think about how like they're gonna try to run the ball, they're gonna try to pound the ball down our throat. I'm gonna run a halfback pass, and the coverage linebacker safety blew the coverage. Hey, turn him loose. Like, hey, we're playing man-to-man coverage. Everyone came up. I'm gonna turn him loose, and all of a sudden, big gain, running through the secondary. They get him down, but it extends the drive. Now you got another 3 downs that you can eat up more time off the clock, and it put them one step closer to kicking a makeable field goal. I thought they did a really good job of getting themselves in makeable scoring situations where it wasn't going to be a strain on their field goal kicker if they needed to take the 3. And when they had to score touchdowns, they scored touchdowns. I mean, think about the first touchdown or the second touchdown they had. He threads the ball between a running corner that was playing man-to-man coverage and a safety or a hybrid corner / safety playing in that spot right there where he turns to run instead of, if he stays square, that's an interception. If he just gets depth, what you're taught in some of those coverages, like, hey, you've got the eyes on the quarterback. You know there's a crossing route coming. Be at this depth. Get at 15 yards. Get at 13 yards where you don't have to turn and run. If you come up a little shallow, your first inclination is to turn and run to try to help. He has to turn and run thinking he's going to help and make that play. He threads the ball. I mean, you can't get a smaller window than that. And he put it in there, and it's a great catch. And I'm not going to argue on whether it was an interception or whether the ball was moving. When you're at Michigan, you're going to get that call. That's a touchdown all day. Same thing if you're in Ohio State. If it's reversed and it's at Ohio Stadium, we're going to get the call. They're going to overturn it. It's an interception. So that's the benefit of being at home. That's the benefit of being in these series. I mean, we can go back years ago when it's Curtis Samuel and everybody's like, he got stopped on fourth down and he does it. We're at home. We're going to get that call. Same thing. Michigan's going to get that call. So I don't argue on whether we should have. You got to do something better to make a stop as a defense, and a heck of a throw. So I give them kudos on that. But I thought they just played with a little bit more moxie. When I watched it, I was like,
they were looser, right? They were
They wanted
loser.
the game more. They wanted it
They
more.
did.
Like, they had more
Yeah.
intensity, more fire. They wanted the game. They wanted to win this game more.
I feel like, being the neutral observer that I am, I feel like Ohio State takes on, the attitude of their head coach, and they
Right.
play kind of tight, right? Like, he's so high strung, and I mean, clearly he wants to win, of course, but boy, he's just tense, and
Yeah.
without Harbaugh there, it almost seemed like they were playing looser, like you said, the halfback pass, like just go out and play, sling the ball around. Not that there wasn't pressure on them, of course there was, but Ohio State just seemed really tense, especially in the
Yeah.
beginning, and got down, and they're just like so high strung. And I wanted to ask you, you obviously been around this program for 30 years. Your head coach is 56-7, okay, and
Right.
he's 0-3 against Michigan. Of course, I understand all that, but man, if those are the expectations, like, does any season ever have any joy if you're an Ohio State Buckeye? If you don't beat Michigan, like, you're 11-1, and again, you went to Notre Dame and won. You dominated Penn State. Of course, you didn't get the outcome that you wanted, but man, what a like almost like what a tough existence as a fan or an alumni or a former player or as a current player or as a coach if the only standard with a new quarterback, your best shot to win that game is if CJ Stroud is still on your team.
Absolutely.
You've got a new quarterback. You run the table. You had an amazing win in South Bend, and now the season's not only just a calamity, but the head coach needs to go. The quarterback needs to go. Like, I don't know. I just like, what's the upside here?
You bring up a great point. I think that is kind of the standard that I'm not going to say that's the standard that the university measures everybody by and measures head coaches and their performance by, but that's what the fan base has now come to expect because you've had some success. And I grew up looking at Earl Bruce and grew up looking at Coach Cooper. So I understand what it was like. And I was a part of that Coach Cooper era. So I understand how the fan base felt. And it wasn't that a lack of effort or anything like that. And again, I don't think that those guys didn't have a lack of effort on Saturday or the previous two losses against Michigan. It's just sometimes things happen and you can't put your finger on it. But you're right. Like, if you decide as a university and as a board of trustees to come in and say we're going to relieve Ryan Davis, who do you get? Like, who
Yeah.
else do you get to come in? There's a time when it's just sometimes you lose to a team they were evenly matched. I thought there were plenty, like when you look at the years when Urban went 7-0 and Jim Tressel went 7-0 or 6-0, like you had just they had more talent on Ohio State's side. I think this is one of the first times where I could say and argue that Michigan top talent was equal on both sides. Like, you could match up talent for talent. You might give the nod to say Ohio State had better receiving room. That might be where you could go, but definitely Michigan had a better offensive line. Michigan had probably just as good. You could probably go push on the defensive line with Ohio State because they didn't necessarily get a lot of pressure throughout the season, but they were pretty good. But Michigan probably got more sacks and got more pressure. So you could even go push or give advantage Michigan on the D line. I would even argue that their secondary you could say their secondary and their corner play might be a little bit better than our corner play because we knew Denzel Burke was good. Igbenogson became somebody who I thought really, really stepped into and played really well throughout the season, but you didn't know going into what type of player he was going to be. But we gave up some plays every now and then. So across the board, running back room, you could say outside of Travion Henderson, Corum, and Edwards, definitely Michigan had the better running back room when you look at
And they
talent
had the
wise.
and they had the better quarterback. They had the
Definitely had the
experienced
better quarterback.
quarterback.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's kind of the thing, right? Like, college football goes in cycles, right? Like,
right.
depending on who your quarterback is, Ohio State just keeps reloading at receiver, but there's very few programs. I mean, Alabama over the last 10, 15 years, and now Georgia, they're the only ones that never take a step back, right? At all. So
Right.
I just, man, after the game, I guess I was just a little taken aback at just the pure vitriol from, Buckeye Nation here when you went 11-1. And, I sometimes you just lose to a team that I thought on paper was better than you. on the road. You were competitive, one-score game. You have the ball down 6 with a chance to win. I mean, I understand being frustrated, upset, all those things. Of course, you're devastated. But to get rid of Ryan Day, like you said, who are you bringing in? That's
There's
gonna
nobody gonna
who are
bring in
you?
that can
You know,
do that, that can duplicate
Urban
that.
Meyer's not Urban Meyer's not coming back there. Like
Nope.
who are you bringing in that's gonna do any better than that? Like I guess to me there's always like a standard of excellence, but then there's like unrealistic expectations. We've talked about teams like Nebraska or teams that the fan base is just delusional. Like and I don't know, it just struck me as wow, you're still number 6, you're still alive for the college football playoff. I hate to see a guy's career, players' seasons all come down to one drive in one game that makes the season just a calamity, and they all need to go. I wouldn't want to be I wouldn't want to be a fan of that team. I guess I mean I know you have no choice, but
we're different, and I think the expectations have changed because you expect Ohio State to be up there, just like people expect Alabama to get there. So what Alabama had 2 or 3 losses last year. So people are like, did Bama fall off? Like you just don't expect to see Ohio State have that one loss against Michigan. You figured at some point in time they would figure it out, especially since you were spoiled with Urban Meyer and him winning a national championship in 2014, and then him beating Michigan all 7 years and 7 times that he was there. So you kind of had this expectation, like if you're new or if you're a little younger, you've been for 13 years, all you've seen was your team dominate and win games against that team up north. So you don't know anything else. You don't know what it's like when they lost that game in a series, because if you're 13, you've been seeing ever since you're a little kid, like, hey, Ohio State beats them. Ohio State wins this game, and they put up like a 56-pointer in one of those games. So I get it. You don't understand what it's like, and so sometimes you kind of need a reality check to set in. I don't think the university pulls a trigger and says they're going to get rid of Ryan Day. That would be absurd to me. I think you have a strong conversation. Okay, coach, give me a plan. Like, give me a 2-year strategy on what you're going to do to be more competitive. I think you can make the argument of you lost some guys. You had Ewers that transferred out because you had a lot of talent at quarterback, and he didn't want to sit and wait. So are you going to go to the portal and try to go get somebody else? Like, give me your plan of what you're trying to do to say, I'm going to build a better team to be more competitive against them. And I think a lot of fans are just upset because people are looking like, man, we lost to the interim head coach. Like, I don't know if Michigan plays as loose and relaxed if Harbaugh is at the sideline, but they definitely have a different personality with their current coach now, with the interim coach.
We're gonna see
look
it
looser.
Right. We're going to see it Saturday, right? I mean, Harbaugh's back for the Big Ten championship.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that is something.
Well,
Iowa cannot offensively. Iowa can't stay with what Michigan.
We need to talk
if
about
Michigan
that.
puts up points, then this is not even a question. Now, if Michigan falters and they happen to lose that game, now we're talking about chaos, which I guess would be a good segment to talk about the rankings that just came out.
Let's go. So the rankings just came out. You had texted me, your predictions ahead of time. And, obviously Georgia number 1, that was no surprise. They first half of that game against Georgia Tech kind of went maybe the way you'd expect. Georgia Tech was competitive. And then, Georgia just kind of stepped on their throat. Michigan number 2, no surprise. Washington number 3, boy, another kind of thread the needle game for Washington. And I cannot wait, to talk about Friday night against Oregon, and then to watch that game. I'm really happy that game's Friday night. Like that to me is a nice bonus. I'd forgotten that until I saw the preview this morning, and I'm like, oh, beautiful. Number 4, Florida State. They very well could have and maybe should have lost that game to Florida. For anybody who watched that game flipped. I think late second quarter, early third quarter, one of the Florida D linemen got ejected for spitting, which I had never seen it actually called spitting. They showed the replay, and he got his money's worth for that 15 yards in the ejection. He spit on a dude. Yeah. It prolonged a drive. Florida State went down and scored and really kind of woke up. And, the backup quarterback did just enough to get the ball in his playmaker's hands to win that game. They're vulnerable. And
very much so.
I would like to see them lose, just because I don't think that without Jordan Travis, they're one of the 4 best teams in college football. So I will definitely be rooting for them to lose. I don't think they do, but it's, that's not out of the question.
again, I would argue that depending on which Louisville team shows up, I mean, you could see that loss. I don't
You
know.
could,
Like
especially
Louisville,
without
Louisville
Jordan
plays
Travis.
tough. Yeah, without
Yeah.
Jordan Travis, like that's gonna be the thing. If they can get after the young quarterback now and get some pressure, which they're unorthodox. They do a lot of different things on defense. They do some weird things on offense. Like, now we know speed wise, Florida State can match up and run with anybody. But I would say don't sleep on Louisville. And I thought it was kind of one of those trap games. I thought they were coming in looking like we know we're going to the ACC championship, and they thought they were going to win that game, and ended up getting a close loss last week. But at the end of the day, like, look, yeah, we need. Well, I won't go and jump ahead,
We'll
but
keep
we'll
we'll
stop.
we'll
We'll keep
keep we'll
talking.
keep
We'll keep
moving here.
talking.
Number five, Oregon.
Yep,
Obviously,
no
those
surprise there.
two those two are going to work themselves out, and I feel like Washington, if they lose, will be out. I don't think that there's being number three, and if you lose the rematch to Oregon, I feel like the way they've played the last 4 or 5 weeks and all of these kind of escapes and high wire acts for them, I feel like the winner of that game clearly is in, but I think
Right.
if Oregon loses, they have 2 losses and they're out. But I think Washington's out as well if they lose. So I think you're down to one Pac-12 team under any circumstance. Your Buckeyes are 6. The team that kind of got hosed here is Texas
Yes.
at 7. And now they're playing an Oklahoma State team that should have lost to BYU. I mean, they should have lost that game. I watched quite a bit of that game in the rain. They should have lost that game, and they were looking ahead to Texas in a rematch. But boy, that's going to be tough for Texas, I think, to jump anybody with a win against Oklahoma State. And then Alabama at number 8, and one of the craziest endings that you'll ever see to any football game ever. I was at the sports book at Turning Stone. It was a scene there. I didn't think that was coming. I thought Jalen Milroe might take off and try to run into the end zone. I thought that might be
Right.
their best play on 4th and goal from the 31. Boy, he reminds me a little bit of Josh Allen in the fact that he can make some of the most spectacular plays in the world, and then some of the most head-scratching plays where, on 3rd down, he's over the line of scrimmage by about 4 yards and then backs up, and he's a high wire act, right? On every play,
Yes, yeah, he's
he's a
exciting.
high
He
wire.
he takes
Yeah,
chances.
you can't turn it away. But boy, talk to me. What did the Auburn DB do wrong on that last play, if anything?
It's tough, right? Like you're trying to figure out how to play. You don't want to get, and it's hard to point the fingers because I'm not sure how he's coached, right? There's some people that say, we want you to be even with the receiver. You don't want to even get behind you. You want to be able to use the end line and do all those things. I mean, but if you're gonna front him, you got to make sure the ball can't go over your head. Like he fronted him, like he literally was playing front coverage in front of the receiver, kind of looking up. Again, Milroe throws an amazing ball. He extends it down. He gets out, extends it down, and now you're like, okay, shoot, is he going to run or is he going to make the throw? And he makes an amazing throw. He puts it where only his receiver can catch it, and now you're hoping as a defensive back that when he comes down, I can either strip it or tip it or do something or get that ball out or push him out. And you can't do either of those things. And so you lose on a heartbreaking manner. And I'm sitting there like, I don't really know what you can do except for coach a little different. Like, listen, body him up, like get where you need to be. Like we should be shoulder to shoulder. He shouldn't be behind me where if it's a deep ball, he has a better opportunity to make that play than I do. And that's kind of the only thing I can say is he put himself in a position where he made it a very difficult play on himself. And a receiver had a little bit more height, made the jump. I mean, the ball was perfect. I mean, we can sit
Yeah.
up here and talk about perfect passes and quarterbacks that just drop it where it should be. You can't ask for a better thrown ball in that scenario, in that situation. It's not too long. It doesn't carry me. It's over the defensive back's head. Only receiver can go up on high point, but it doesn't carry him out of the position where he can't get 2 feet down. And it was just an amazing throw. And I'm sitting there like, wow, like this, you lose a game like this, and you just shake your head and say, okay, that is really what you look at with Milroe, the up and down, the inconsistencies. But then that's also why you're like, he gives you the best chance to win. And I don't understand why they benched him a game early in the season because he by far, he's young, he's still learning, but he by far is the most dynamic player and playmaker that you have on your offense and the dynamic quarterback that you have in that quarterback room. And so he seemed to settle in during the season. And when a game's on the line, he made the right play, and Auburn came up a little short, just a little short.
It
But I
was
didn't think they were going to win that game. But I was like, Auburn's going to knock them off, and you don't have to worry about Alabama coming in. So it's going
right.
to be interesting on Saturday.
It was ironic that it was the 10-year anniversary of the kick six, when Auburn
Right,
returned the field goal 109 yards. Those games, and we talked about that game and how, it's always more fun when Auburn is good because, that is Auburn and Alabama kind of reminds me of Ohio State, Michigan in the fact that, man, Auburn was 6-5, but if they beat Alabama and knock them out of the playoff, their season is
right.
made.
Season's
Like
made, yeah.
everything was down to that game. And Auburn's always kind of the little brother to Alabama. And what a brutal way to lose. Like, I mean, that was tough. And ironically,
Yes.
that throw, and how the DB played it was really eerily reminiscent of Sunday when Jalen Hurts threw the one in the back of the end zone that got over Mike Hyde's head. And
Yeah, it really
the
was.
kid made it really. I saw that and I'm like, I just saw this movie yesterday with the Jalen Milroe throw. So the Bama Georgia game. I mean, we've been talking about that for quite a bit of time. And previewing that, you wonder, Bama's riding high now. Like, what does that feel like as a player? You escaped. I mean, you escaped, right? Like, your season's still alive. You escaped. Now you got to go play, the best team in college football over the last 3 years in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. They're going to have, probably a 60-40, home field advantage. Like,
Right,
God,
right.
what a ride those guys for Alabama are on. But, is there a letdown possibility there? I know that sounds crazy
No,
considering it's the SEC championship, but you're not just emotionally exhausted from winning that game, right? You're just riding the
you're
wave.
not exhausted from that. You're riding the wave. Like I think, and I think you have to look at it from Alabama's standpoint, right? Like we're sitting up here talking about you escaped. They're talking about, listen, we found a way to win. Like we
Sure.
don't look at it as we escaped. We found a way to win against a team that maybe the records didn't say they were when you look at the 6-5 record, like, all right, maybe their record says they're not as good as everyone thinks they are, but this is a rivalry game. So, they want nothing more than to knock us off and knock us out of being in that college football playoff mention right now. And so when you look at Alabama's side of it, their thing was like, we don't really care. Like all we have to do is win. If we win and we put ourselves in an opportunity to be still, you go out and you knock off Georgia on Saturday, like you're going to be in, you're in, and that's going to cause some chaos theory. So you're not looking at it as we got lucky and we survived. You're going to go back and say, okay, what did Auburn do to us to put us in positions? And how do we overcome? Like, hey, Jalen, great throw. We love what you were doing, Jalen. You're 4 yards past the line of scrimmage. You can't do that, right? Like,
Yeah,
you're gonna go back and coach.
We
And
gotta
say, here we go.
calm down just a little bit on some of these. He's, again, he's the high wire act. He's 5 years ago. He's 5 years ago, Josh Allen, where you can't take your eyes off of him, but you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen.
Right.
And you live with that, right? Especially with him, he's a high variance quarterback. You live with it because A, it's the best guy you got, but B, that's your shot to beat Georgia, right? Because
that's your shot. Because his legs is the one thing that and Georgia's going to try to be ready. It's going to be interesting to see how they play, where they're going to use a spy, because then you're going to say, I like some one-on-one matchups that he's going to try to take advantage of it, because he can definitely throw the ball. So that is a very interesting game. And the game that I would definitely be watching the most is watching that game at 4 on Saturday, because that's the first, Friday is the first cast, right? Like if Washington wins, then you already know that Washington's in, right? So that's not a question. And then right now, Oregon's 5, Ohio State 6. So that's one spot that they go down. We come back and you look at it on Saturday, Texas and Oklahoma State. I mean, that's a 50-50 toss-up. Like, I mean, I'm an Oklahoma State fan. Like, I mean,
yes,
I'm another OSU fan. Like, I'm a text Thurman and be like, yo, I'm an OSU fan today. Like,
there you go.
Let's go. And
Cowboys.
OSU, like, go Cowboys. Like, let's go. And then Georgia, Alabama is the key, because if Georgia, and then the question then remains is, because I love chaos theory, is if Alabama knocks off Georgia, where does Georgia fall? That's the question. Is Georgia going 4?
Right. Obviously, it depends on how the game goes. I don't see a scenario where Georgia ever gets blown out. I just don't. I don't. They're not built that way. They're so physical. They can run the ball. They start slow quite a bit. But even if Alabama wins that game, I don't see any way in the world that they win by a margin that would say, oh, wow, Georgia wasn't competitive, we should knock them out. It feels like they have a spot, especially being the 2-time defending champ. Man, I feel like they have a spot almost no matter what, unless I can't even envision a scenario where they're not in. Like you said, when you look at the weekend, It kind of sets up perfectly for you as an Ohio State, fan, and
Yes,
then a
it does.
chaos lover. The times of these games are great. You clearly you want Oregon to win, right? But
Right.
I think because Oregon's already ahead of Ohio State, there's almost no way if they beat Washington that they're not still ahead of Ohio State, who doesn't even play this weekend. So it feels like the winner of that game is in. It feels like you definitely want, at noon, you're absolutely cheering for, Thurman's Cowboys. That's the no
Absolutely.
brainer. You want Georgia to win.
Yep.
You got to get Alabama out of there. Now, what do you want at 8 o'clock? What do you want with the Michigan and Iowa game? And obviously you want Louisville to beat Florida State. That's another no brainer at 8 o'clock.
Yes, that's a
But
no-brainer.
you're
Really, really, when I'm looking at it, I want Washington to win. I don't want Oregon to win because then you have another one-loss team, and you're
sure.
trying to figure out where does Washington get ranked? Should Washington be ranked over Ohio State or not? So I don't want that drama. I want Washington to win because now you have Georgia. If Georgia wins on Saturday, so Friday, I want Washington to win. Boom, that takes care of Oregon. Oregon is now 2 losses. They're out. Ohio State, in all actuality, before those games are played, will go at 1 spot. You want Louisville to knock off Florida State for certain.
Yep.
So I'm definitely a Louisville fan. So I'll be rooting for them. And then really you want to see, I don't want Alabama to win. I love chaos, but I don't want Alabama to win. I don't want Texas to win because of where they put Ohio State, Texas has 2 losses now. And then you're going to have, if Oregon loses, they have 2 losses. And then because Alabama lost, they have 2 losses. So by default, Ohio State ends up being back at number 4 because all the teams that are underneath them have 2 losses. They don't have their conference championships. Florida State has a loss. They don't have a conference championship. Our strength of schedule, based off of how the committees always saw it, is better. So that's how Ohio State gets in. You really need Washington to not win Friday, Georgia to win, and then you need everyone else to win to lose. But you need Michigan to win. You don't really want to see Michigan lose that game because then you make it like, do they get ranked ahead of Ohio State because they beat Ohio State, but they lost in the champ? They still have one more victory than Ohio State has, and that's the argument that you could make. So I need Michigan to win. I'm a Wolverine fan only for one night.
Yeah, you were upset after the game, rightfully so, and frustrated. And I texted you, and I'm like, there's still a path there, and it seemed apparent to me even at 4 o'clock on Saturday that Ohio State, if they're the only 1-loss team along with Florida State, Ohio State will be 4. That's what you need,
Yes.
right? Like to break it down to just you need Ohio State and Florida State to have 1 loss, and you need all the 1-loss teams this weekend to lose. You need Bama to lose, you need Texas to lose, and you need Oregon to lose. And that's not crazy. It's not likely because there's just so many moving parts, but it's also not crazy. So, and the nice thing for you is that they're all spread out at different times over the weekend. So I personally, as a friend of yours and for our show, and I hope it gets to that Louisville, Florida State game at 8 o'clock because it's kind of ironic this year because Louisville was the team that made me the most angry throughout our podcast. Knocking off Notre Dame and ending their it would be kind of karma and kind of interesting if your season came down to the Louisville Cardinals, like unfortunately my Fighting Irish's season came down to the Louisville Cardinals, and obviously hopefully you'd have a better outcome in that game than I did. But the weekend, those 2 days set up great. They're all compelling matchups. I saw something on Twitter. I wanted to share with you and the people listening. Do you know what Iowa's team point total is for Saturday night? What's the over-under of Iowa's team points for the game?
Maybe 17, 13.
Iowa, half a point, Marlon. In Las Vegas, it is a 50-50 shot that Iowa scores any points on Saturday against Michigan.
I think they score points. I think they score points against Michigan. 100%.
I agree. I'm taking their team points over. I think it's kind of crazy in a game like that. Their defense is good enough to cause a turnover in plus territory, to get a run back, a punt return. It's crazy to me to ever bet a team in a conference championship to get shut out. It's difficult to shut a team out, even if it's in garbage time. If Michigan's up 24-0 and they pull their starters on the last drive of the game or whatever. So just the whole world is counting Iowa out. I don't know if the nobody believes in us thing is going to really matter because I don't think that they're explosive enough to keep up with Michigan. Like you said, Michigan's got
Right.
playmakers, and they're going to move the ball even on a good Iowa team. But it is kind of an interesting spot for Michigan, right? There's going to be your coach is back. You've just beat your biggest rival. There's going to be a little bit of a lull, right? I wouldn't even call it a letdown, but facing Iowa the week after facing Ohio State in the Big House is not the same.
Definitely not the same. And so you're hoping that there's no letdown on them. You need them to go out and take care of business. I think the first quarter they could start slow, and I think I could see Iowa keeping it like 0-0 or 3-0 or even a 7-0 end of the first quarter. It all comes down to two things. One, can Michigan run the ball? If they can run the ball against that Iowa defense, then that's going to make play action really good for them. And then off of that, if they can run the ball, then can JJ McCarthy make the right decisions off that play action? Can he hit the open receivers? If they can't run the ball and they rely on his arm, will he be the JJ McCarthy that threw the threaded needle pass for a touchdown against the Buckeyes? Or will he be the JJ McCarthy against Bowling Green, where he threw like 3 or 4 interceptions earlier in the season? So that's where you really need to be able to run the ball if you're Michigan, because you don't want all the pressure to be placed on JJ McCarthy and say, okay, I need you to go and just play mistake-free football, because then you make it so that Iowa can keep it in. They will get turnovers. Like, they're a scrappy defense. They tip passes. And in that scenario, I'm not sure with Harbaugh back. That's the question. I want to see how they play with Harbaugh back at the helm. Do they play as loose as they played against Ohio State, or do they play a little bit more tight? Like, if it's 10-3 at the half or 10-7 at the half, is it a tight Michigan team? Do they just try to play that old trestle ball back in the day, or play Penn State football where we're going to rely on our defense and punt? That's what Iowa's done all year, and they've been pretty successful, and they know how to execute that down the stretch. And so that will be the anatomy of a makeup if they can't run the ball. But I think with their 2 running backs, I think Michigan should be able to win this game. And Michigan should, I would say something like a 45-10 victory.
Yeah.
Michigan would have on there if they play come focused.
As soon as Iowa's down 2 scores, it's over.
It's
right?
over. It's over. They're not built for that.
They're not built for it. They can't adjust. They've shown that all year. Like, they can only play one way. And it's successful in the Big Ten West when you're playing, Illinois and Wisconsin and teams that can't wait to punt the ball right back to you. So but against a team like Michigan and Ohio State that want to score, and actually want to put points on the board, if you're down 17-3, something like that, you're probably toast. So that's almost the least compelling of the games to me this weekend. Like, it feels like Michigan's kind of in either way, unless something catastrophic happens. So it's almost the game that I'm looking forward to the least, because the stakes, because Iowa just doesn't feel like a credible, upset contender. I can see Louisville. Louisville is a live dog, especially with Jordan Travis out. Louisville would have been a live dog anyways because of their unique style, and but Iowa just doesn't seem like a live dog to me at all. That one will not be on the big screen. I'll have Louisville, Florida State on, and if Ohio State still has a shot, I promise you I will cheer for Louisville. If Ohio State does not have a shot, I will root against Louisville, because they aggravated me. I don't know. Did you see any of the Notre Dame game on Saturday? Probably not.
No, I was
Pac-12 network.
I was wallowing.
I understand. Audric Estime had 245 yards rushing, and I actually just
where was that all season?
No kidding. And no, and they kept feeding them the ball, and it was actually interesting in the fourth quarter. They're up big, and Marcus Freeman asked him if he wanted to go back in the game because he was 5 yards away from the Notre Dame all-time rushing record for a single game, and he declined. He declined, and the game was out of hand. I mean, they were up, I think, 55-14, whatever. And I actually admired that. I thought that was really kind of classy by him. I
respect that.
And he was 5 yards away, and they all knew it. And the single game rushing record in Notre Dame it's a big deal. That's a nice record to have, and he declined that. And there's kind of some talk about whether he's going to go to the NFL or he might come back to Notre Dame next year. Personally, I hope he comes back, obviously. But, they closed the season on kind of a high note. Stanford is just terrible. And there weren't more than like 20,000 people at that game. It's just, the environment there was bad. Now, I don't know if you saw any of the bowl projections. And sometimes, these are kind of all over the place, whatever, all the different bowl games. My buddy Pat, who's a big Syracuse fan, I watched the game with him Syracuse beat Wake Forest with an interim coach to get to 6-6, and now they're going to go to like the Birmingham Bowl or the Motor City Bowl or one of these, nondescript bowls. Almost all of the experts, Marlon, have Notre Dame playing in the ReliaQuist Bowl, which is the old Citrus Bowl in Orlando, against our old friend Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers. On New Year's Day,
I would love that matchup. Yes,
it's got to be, and it's funny because they're talking about how the bowls can kind of trade teams. They have these like kind of loose slots for conferences, and it's supposed to be ACC versus SEC, and where you finish in the standings determines who you play. Like the third ranked team in the ACC is supposed to play the third ranked team in the SEC, and down the line. Well, I guess there's some horse trading going on and some bargaining, and I think the powers that be in college football want Notre Dame versus LSU. The crazy thing is that both quarterbacks might not play.
That's true.
If you're Jayden Daniels, I don't see why you'd play in this game. And then if you're Sam Hartman, he has no need. He's going to probably win the Heisman. I don't know why you'd play. If you're Sam Hartman, you've played college football for like 138 years now. And, I don't know whether his pro prospect, he's probably a mid-level pick, right? Like a mid-round pick, career backup. I don't know if you're going to play in that game. But the theater at like 11 a.m. on New Year's Day of Marcus Freeman against Brian Kelly, you got to make it happen, right? I want to see that.
Right.
And how funny that Marcus –
that would be so perfect.
Yep,
so
and how funny that Brian Kelly left Notre Dame because he said that they didn't have the commitment to win national championships like LSU did, and now he's going to end up playing Notre Dame in the same bowl game because his team went 9-3 too.
Exactly, and you can't write a better story, and the irony of all that, and I think in the long run, Notre Dame is probably in a better position. LSU was in the SEC, and having the gauntlet that you have to run with every week to try to knock off those teams. I don't know if his coaching style is going to lend itself to being able to say they're going to go undefeated, because you pretty much have to go undefeated.
Yeah.
And you can't have a loss in conference. You can have a loss out of conference, just like Alabama had one loss against Texas. You can have that loss, but you can't lose one in conference. And so I don't know if he ever gets to, LSU is committed to trying to win a national championship 100%, but so is Notre Dame. So to make that statement, just say you want it out. Just say they weren't listening to me anymore. And the level of athlete that I'm getting here just isn't responding to my coaching style and the way I communicate to athletes. You can say that, and I would respect that more than saying they're not committed to winning. Like, obviously they're committed to winning. So it's interesting. I'm definitely, and if that plays out, I'm taking Notre Dame. You don't have to worry about it. I'm 100% in.
There you go. Good man. Good man.
And I want to see them beat the brakes off of Brian Kelly.
I think the funny thing is that Brian Kelly went 9-3 with the presumptive Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. Like, he has the Heisman Trophy winner, and you still lost 3 games. Good luck to you going forward. You're not going to get a better quarterback at LSU than Jayden Daniels has been. Like, you're just not. He is dynamic. He's fantastic. He's played his ass off all year long. And if you can't be a credible threat, and you end up playing your old school who wasn't committed to winning, when you have the Heisman Trophy winner as your quarterback, good luck to you going forward. I don't see it for old BK down there. And I agree with you. I hope Notre Dame just kind of runs all over them if it comes to that game. Because Marcus will have his guys, whoever is playing in that game. It'll be personal for some of those guys, because Brian Kelly only left 2 years ago. So he still left some of those guys.
Oh yeah, they know him. They would love that matchup. You can't write a better story. Yeah, like you can't write a better story for that to happen.
Couple more quick ones before we go here. Did you see who is getting hired as the new offensive coordinator at Arkansas?
Bobby Petrino.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so a couple things here. Bobby Petrino's history is checkered at best. At best. So the head coach there is under Sam Altman is under he's on the hot seat, and Bobby Petrino feels like a desperation hire on his behalf, but it also feels like you're hiring a replacement, because Bobby Petrino is kind of a head coach in waiting, and the kind of guy who might shank you to the administration if you go on a 3-game losing streak. And Arkansas is a tough place to win to begin with, but man, I feel like if I'm a head coach and I'm to the point where I need to hire Bobby Petrino as my OC, that's a tough spot, right?
That's a tough spot, and the checker pass is really what kind of like lays it like you couldn't find somebody else with less baggage coming in, like, and as the age of where he is, how is he going to relate to this younger generation? Can he? Will they listen to him? And if it goes sideways quick, like that says, okay, listen, like this is one of those hires where you have to think like either it better win and it better work out and you guys better win and you better turn it around, you better put up a lot of points, or that could be one of those hires that gets both of you kicked out of there really quickly. Kind of
Right.
like one of those Ryan hires, right? Like, hey, like, you might get a chance, but you brought in somebody else and all of a sudden it goes sideways. Well, both of you need to go because
And
you said it was going to work and it didn't work.
and he has the potential to blow it up off the field too. Not just
Yeah.
his coaching, but he clearly has some self-control issues and baggage to where you wonder if he even makes it to the season. And like you said, boy, why are you bringing in like a retread of a failed, I'm sure he's got a great offensive mind, but what young kid is going to go play for Arkansas if they've got a bunch of other options and excited to play for 65-year-old Bobby Petrino? Like if I was the mom, the dad of a 17-year-old Marlon, no way. Sorry, buddy, you're not playing for Bobby Petrino. Like I wouldn't want my kid around
questions.
him.
That's why you ask questions. Like, listen, like, hey, if I have other options, I may consider taking the other options. But if this is the only option I have, then okay, well, what type of offense are we running? Like, Bobby Petrino's been out for a while. Like, did he have some decent offenses in the past? Yes. I mean, now could he have revamped his entire offensive philosophy and said, "Here's what I think we should do"? And is he going to be more aggressive because of his age and saying, "Look, where we are, we need to take more chances"? Could be, but when you take risk, there's also a high risk means high loss too. So high risk is high reward, and high risk is high loss too. Like it could go the other way. So that's kind of one of those decisions where, look, he already made the decision. He's bringing him in, and whatever capacity that's going to look like, unless the board of trustees override it and says, no, we're not doing that. But as it stands now, it's been reported on that he's coming in.
Yeah,
Now,
man. The
let's
SEC,
see how it translates. I don't know how it translates.
Some of these SEC schools, the lower tier, boy, sometimes they strike you as really desperate, right? Like that just feels like a desperate hire. And if you're Arkansas and you're stuck in the SEC West with Alabama and with Auburn and Ole Miss and LSU and now Texas coming in, like I could see why you're desperate to a point.
Yeah.
But boy, selling your soul for a guy like him, to me, is a tough look. And I'd almost rather not win than win with that dude. That's just, that's just my take on it. But I know it's college football.
We love a good redemption story, no matter what, whatever level it is. We love a good redemption story. So if he has said, hey, listen, I made some mistakes. I know that I own them. I've never heard him say it was somebody else's fault. He's always owned up to his mistakes and said, I've not made good decisions. But so you want to listen to the man and see what he says. And then if it turns out that they go in and they go on a great roll, it's a great story. It sells a lot of tickets. It does a whole lot of things. It makes them the darling of the SEC. It makes boosters happy. So at this point, I mean, we talked about Ryan Day. Who else could you get? Like, who else is going to take that job? I think that's kind of the question that you have when you look at a Bobby Petrino coming back and you're saying, okay, listen, you don't think he's talked to other people and said, hey, I need a good offensive mind. Would you be willing to take it? Some guys were like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and stay where I am. I'm in a better position to go there. So it may have been just some of the other people that he inquired about said, no, I've got a good gig. I'm staying here. And Bobby Petrino's like,
well, he's almost a lame duck. Sam, at Arkansas, he's in trouble, and you're right.
Yeah, he's in trouble, and he turns it around. He keeps his job. If he doesn't, they're both out.
Yeah, no, that's
no
fair.
harm, no foul.
One more for you here. I posted it on our Twitter account. I retweeted it. Did you happen to see Mike Elko went from Duke to Texas A&M? And Texas A&M, I think, is the strangest place in all of college football and maybe in all of America. Did you see the press conference when they did the whole swaying back and forth?
And they're like, that's weird. I don't know what that is.
That's a weird ass place. That's a weird place. Did you ever play with anybody? Are you friends with anybody who went there?
Yeah, I knew some guys went there, but we didn't talk too much about their experience at Texas A&M. Just kind of like, look,
it seems like what a weird place.
Texas A&M, okay, I'm good. I will have to ask like what that whole Swain Circle thing was and why why that's a tradition.
I hate to bring it up. It reminds me of a cult. They got that midnight yell practice and just all the weird little things they do there. And then to introduce your coach. And I mean, he must have known that was coming. And with the bag of money they gave him, hey, I'll sway in front of a camera for $50 million or whatever it is. But I don't know. It just strikes me as such a weird place. I don't know. It was weird.
Hey, look, everyone has their traditions. You try to buy into it and show that you're, hey, I'm all in, but yeah, I mean, the paycheck is nice and the buyout clause is really nice. So
Sure.
I'm staying there. I'm staying right there. I'm good.
All right. Any final thoughts for us before you go back in the bunker for Friday and Saturday?
I wish I could see chaos, but chaos is not good for my Buckeyes. So I really just want to see it play out with Washington winning and Florida State losing. I think that is, as Buckeye fans, that is the best case scenario for the Buckeyes to then get back in. Washington needs to win. Florida State needs to lose.
And Oklahoma State needs. And Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and Oklahoma State wins. Alabama loses, and then our Buckeyes are there. So anything else, then we're sitting outside and looking, and we're playing Louisville or somebody else. And if Washington loses, I could see them trying to see if the Buckeyes will play Washington.
That'd be
one of those bowl games, depending on how it plays out. So that would be a fun matchup. But outside of that, I'm just thankful that everyone listened to us and we got to talk about Buckeye football. And we're going to talk about some of these bowl matchups as they play out. But I'm sorry we came up 3 years short in a row, Buckeye fans. And we're just going to go back and reload and figure out what it looks like going forward. I'm always going to stick and bleed scarlet and gray. And I am not one calling for Ryan Day's job, but I definitely we need to revamp some things and figure out why things happen, and then hopefully they get back onto the winning things and the winning side with the game at the Horseshoe in 2024. So, great season. They had some good things and some young players, but quarterback play definitely was a liability at times, and you need to figure out why and the development of that young player. Is there somebody else that needs to be a different voice to help him mature faster?
There's still a path, Marlon. Till next week, I'm going to leave you with that.
There's a path. I believe.
There is still, and that same mantra could be applied to other football teams that we know. There is still a path.
Where we live at in Buffalo. We still believe here too. I believe here too.
There's still a path. All right, we'll see you next week, buddy.
See you next week.